So Zero Skull says Brian Greene is a charlatan. Thank you, Zero Skull. I appreciate that.
My greatest story of the number one. Why so
It's the ZERØ Show special episode Free to Decide. Made with milk from unborn cows of unspecified age or gender. C, a poorly construed flyer intended to scare and confuse a simple majority of Ohio voters so that we behave irrationally. Discover the mysterious meaning behind all the clerical markups on that weird flyer. Play the Super Ziggy drinking game. And more. I might always be wrong.
Well, I was hoping to have this done by yesterday. It's now Friday the 13th, so I guess this will be my spooky Halloween episode. Yeah. Okay, so 1968, was it 60? I believe it was 68 or 69. Michael Crichton published a book under a pseudonym because he feared that it would get him killed to publish the book under his actual name. Called A Case of Need. It is about a woman who gets an abortion and dies. The primary suspect is a really good doctor who has been known to or suspected of performing abortions in the past. This was done by Crichton to present the reader, at a time when abortion was illegal, to present the reader with plausible reasons why this woman died, and to prove that those plausible reasons are actually implausible. The really good doctor is later proved to be innocent. And then the suspect becomes a not-so-good doctor who has also been known to or suspected of performing abortions in the past. And then it turns out that he is innocent as well, and it was actually that the woman was too scared to go to hospital to get this procedure, too scared to go to a doctor, even in private, to get this procedure. So she had two people who had no medical training perform the abortion, and that is what killed her. The point is that if abortion is illegal, people are going to get it anyway, and they will get it any way they can, even if it will kill them. The movie Dirty Dancing features a sequence where, oh god, what's the blonde, or the original dancer who Baby took over for, had to stop working because she had gotten an abortion, and it was terrible. She got a horrible infection. The line is the guy had rusty knives. I'm pretty sure that was it. The guy had a rusty knife, and then Baby's dad helps her, and then Patrick Swayze's character says that he's responsible for the situation. He is responsible for, he paid for the abortion and paid for her to get that done, but he was not responsible for getting pregnant. And so, blah. Yeah, he winds up getting fired from the Kellerman's family holiday camp. But then it turns out that it was someone else who had gotten her pregnant, and Patrick Swayze was doing all that he could to help her. Yeah. So anyway, if abortions are illegal, people will get them, and they will get them in any way they can, even if it might kill them. There is like people are human and need services to help them, and if they can't get those services, for example, like if you can't get cannabis at a corner store, you'll go to a drug dealer, and that drug dealer might have connections to other drugs, might have connections to weapons and dealers, and like perhaps even like at some lower levels, connections to terrorist organizations, and then you wind up involved in all of that just because you wanted cannabis. But if cannabis is legal, then you are not involved in all that, and it's less likely that the marijuana dealer, the cannabis dealer, would actually be willing to handle that particular workload, since other people can do it legally and probably cheaper. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to get that clear, that this isn't about like, hey, we want this and we want. I am not pro-abortion. I am not anti-abortion. I am pro-choice. I have never had an abortion. I've never gotten anyone pregnant. I have never had a reason to need such a thing. But if that were to happen, I do not know how I would react. I do not know what decision I would make. I've never been in that situation. But it would be nice if I had that option. I don't know if I would take it, but it would be nice if that option existed, is all I'm saying.
And it's just been brought to my attention that Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is also involved in malicious misrepresentation of the law. He is claiming that this would allow an abortion at any time in the pregnancy. What he does not say is that in the event of a medically necessary abortion, which is less than 0.1% of all abortions, it would allow you to have an abortion at any time, such as if the fetus is dead, or if the fetus is absorbing too much nutrients from the mother and killing her. These kinds of things. If it turns out that the fetus will be born without a brain. Those are things that you could get a medically necessary abortion for. Those are times when you could get an abortion at any time in the pregnancy, but the main line of it is that only medically necessary abortions can be performed after fetal viability. This does not allow you to just go in, oh, an abortion now because I don't like having pregnancy. That doesn't allow you to get an abortion. If you want an elective abortion, you have to get that within the first 22 weeks of your pregnancy. And a medically necessary abortion is not something that a patient decides. It's something that a doctor tells them they might need. And then it is up to the patient to decide whether they want that abortion or not. This does not allow you to get an abortion at any time in your pregnancy. Mike DeWine, committing fraudulent misrepresentation of the law. Criminal Mike DeWine, committing literal fraudulent misrepresentation. Sue Mike DeWine. Yeah, class action against him. Go ahead. Bing! How deep into your underwear do you want the government to get? If you grant the government permission to get wrist deep, elbow deep, shoulder deep into your neighbor's underwear, by law, then you have also given permission for them to get that deep into your underwear and the underwear of your family. You would give them permission to double check me, and in so doing, you would give them permission to double check you, your spouse, your parents, your children. First thing, this episode is entirely about this piece of waste paper that I got in the mail, and which is marked up by numbskulls who know how to scare people but have no reading comprehension skills. In writing this episode, I had to review this thing a lot. I even carefully removed all the markups to create a clear version to illustrate how ridiculous all the notes applied to this piece of pasteboard truly are, which they are, ridiculous. We'll get to the fun of mocking the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable in just a minute, and it will be fun, I promise. There is one phrase on this thing which is not noted by the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable, the group who marked up the flyer, because of their poor reading comprehension skills and lack of expressive capacity, and it appears right at the end of the last sentence in Part B. Dum. If you have one of these, or the actual text of the amendment, take a look. This clause states that even if elective abortions can only be performed up to a limit, say fetal viability or heartbeat or whatever, but even if the pregnant patient is past that point in their pregnancy, an abortion determined to be medically necessary by the patient's doctor cannot be prohibited. And that is fine, but it says that the abortion must be deemed necessary to protect the pregnant patient's life or health. This phrase may look like an egregious oversight, and I have seen a few people excitedly pointing at that phrase, life or health, who feel that the language is too broad. Life or health, they say, is of such a broad scope of inexactitude that it could literally mean anything. But there is actually a very specific reason why the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable did not note it, and a very specific reason why it is there. That is actually language carried over from Roe v. Wade, and enforcement will not be up to anybody's personal interpretation of life or health. It will be based on legal precedent concerning every case that was ever brought to the Supreme Court concerning that specific precedent. Precedent, not president, precedent, that which came before, preceding. Anyway, the Ohio Roundtable committed fraud in sending this out to the people of Ohio, so if you happen to be a lawyer, you can easily put together a class action lawsuit about fraudulent misrepresentation of legal claims intended to disenfranchise voters. Let's get on to the show. Hi, hey, hello, welcome. Come on in, everybody, by which I mean you. Welcome to the show.
I'm ZERØ School, and boy oh boy are we going to have some big fun today, eh kids? Because we're going to be talking about abortion. No, that's not it. We're going to have some big fun today because we're going to discuss specific legal language and recognizing lies and scare tactics intended to keep America divided so we can be readily conquered from the outside. Yeah, I guess it won't really be all that fun, but I'll do my best. So I got this wackadoo piece of waste paper of a flyer in the mail that looks like it was composed by two semi-literate drunk guys and then gone over by a clever semi-literate guy who call themselves the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable and who want to appeal to and scare the lowest common denominator of people, the 87.5% of the total population who have no clue how to use a semicolon. If you got this flyer in the mail and you don't know exactly how to use a semicolon, you are in the right place watching this video. Don't worry, having no interest in changing that demographic or having your eyes glaze over or having you flee, I will not go into semicolons and I will not let you go into semicolon and we'll move on. This piece of waste paper is intended to scare and confuse people who already believe the worst about their neighbors, probably because they believe the worst about themselves, and it's the best they can do to love their neighbor as they love themselves, to believe the worst about them, and to hate them and fear them instead of meeting them and forming a community with them. When we make assumptions about our neighbors, we are imagining in our own minds, not observing the facts of reality. Familiar, fearful ideas prod the old fear circuits that are relayed as often as they are brought online, but we tend to forget the last time because it is shocking, which can be traumatic, which the mind will tend to repress. So the next time hits all those old memories and it feels like the first time all over again, even though this happens all the time. When we are scared and confused, we become unreasonable and are prone to rash decisions based on gut feeling and feeling rushed or overwhelmed, not thinking too clearly, giving very little actual consideration to what we are presented with. When we feel calm and happy, we tend to think more clearly and make better decisions. Nothing like a marked up sheet of text reminding us of the one time we really applied ourselves in English class and got the worst remarks from the teacher on every single line, because that is sure to keep us feeling calm, happy, and rational, right? Step 1. Make it look like a failing grade to remind the average recipient of a failing grade they once got to get them feeling upset and confused. Why would someone send me a failing grade? What did I do? But then you see it as someone else's failing grade with the teacher's notes all over it. But you do not see a grade and you do not realize that it is not marked up by any teacher. Mark Pitcairn, a famed extremist watchdog who you may or may not have seen on Fox News or MSNBC or Face the Nation, etc., received a copy of this same flyer in his mailbox and X'd about it on Twixer. Hi Mark, I realize you are an extremist watchdog and don't have time to really pursue little things like this, such that you don't even have time to be here on my show, and I am currently talking to the empty air, but tell me, briefly, what you did immediately notice about the flyer based on your skill set of identifying, compiling, and reporting on messages from extremists and extremist groups.
This week I received in the mail a flyer from the right-wing Ohio-based American Policy Roundtable designed to scare Ohioans about the upcoming vote for a state constitutional amendment to secure reproductive rights. The tactics the flyer used were interesting. Read on. The flyer provides an annotated version of the proposed amendment. Many of the notes reveal more about the APR than the amendment. Note its scare tactics, mentioning things like harvesting body parts, chemical castration, trans surgeries on minors, and cloning.
Oh, wow!
Here they ask, already knowing that it full well does not, does this write Planned Parenthood into the Constitution? See how it tries to raise unease about terms like health and evidence-based by calling them undefined?
Oh, wow!
Here, in response to the amendment text about fetal viability, they insert the note, subjective judgment of abortionist, which is an interesting way to twist what is actually professional opinion of a physician.
Oh, wow!
They also add a final thought, asserting that the people of Ohio will be silenced on this subject, which is an interesting way of characterizing an amendment that could only be passed by the assent of the people of Ohio.
Golly, thank you, Mark Pitcairn. I am now going to go through all the notes on this thing line by dreaded line using my skill set as a literary editor and explain what every point brought up means and why every note marked on the page is pointless or ridiculous, and some are even counterproductive to the supposed aims of the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable.
Shut it, ZERØ School.
Ziggy?
I said shut it.
It is. It's Ziggy Smox, everybody. Maybe the show will be fun.
Are you deaf? Shut it. You suck as a host, so I'm taking over your show for this special episode.
Hey Ziggy, welcome to the show. Tell me, when are we going to see the final part of Time for Recess?
Shut up! I'll kill you. I don't care who I kill. I'm a cigarette.
The ZERØ Show proudly presents the Ziggy Smox Superbo Supreme King Size Cigarette Comedy Show. Starring Ziggy Smox.
Hey, hi, hello, welcome. Come on in and get cozy. Welcome everybody. By which I mean you. Welcome to the Ziggy Smox Superbo Supreme King Size Cigarette Comedy Show. Brought to you by new Superbo Supreme Turbo Extreme Short Pack Filter Cigarettes. No ash, no mess, no tobacco, no paper. Filter all the way. You can't smoke them, but you can look cool and enjoy. Also available in unfiltered. Get luxury and pleasure. Get Superbo. New Superbo Supreme Turbo Extreme Short Pack Filter Cigarettes. I'm Ziggy Smox, and today, for a special episode, we are going to go over the ridiculous, bizarre, and hilarious markups on this flyer about the proposed amendment to the Ohio Constitution about reproductive freedom, produced and leafleted by the surprisingly illiterate research staff of the Ohio Roundtable. If you want to get drunk, try taking a shot every time I say the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable, because I will say it a lot. Now, let's get on to the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable's markups of the proposed amendment. First thing we see on the flyer, prepared by the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable, above the header, top left, in red, as though indicating an error, is a note from the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable that the word woman does not appear in this entire amendment. I'll go further than that. Not only does the amendment not mention woman, it does not mention man, or girl, or boy, or even hermaphroditic person, or androgynous person, or intersex person, and it makes no specification pertaining to any gender or gender identity, nor does it use the definers she, or he, or his, or her. And there's a reason. The word woman does not appear in this entire amendment because the amendment refers first to every individual, all people who might become pregnant or induce pregnancy. And any person might possibly be a minor girl under the age of womanhood, whatever age that means. And they might also be boys or men with erectile, penile, seminal, spermatozoa, projectile, ejaculative capacity. It does also refer to specific pregnant patients, but I don't think we need to worry about specifying the true birth certificate gender, gender expression, duality of gender, or preferred gender consideration of pregnant patients, but that we merely show that they either are or are not people, who either are or are not patients, and that if they are people who are patients, that they either are or are not pregnant. People who cannot induce pregnancy and people who cannot become pregnant have nothing to do with anything in this amendment. Otherwise, no matter who you are, it has to do with you to some degree. Then we see the header. Full text of proposed amendment. This is not the text of the amendment, but is actually the full text of the amendment proposal as it was expected to appear on the ballot. A condensed version of the full text will be what people do see to vote upon, and it follows with, "Be it resolved by the people of the state of Ohio." That means if the people of the state of Ohio vote yes for, and continues, that Article 1 of the Ohio Constitution is amended to add the following section. That means that the Constitution of the state of Ohio will be changed for the better to include the text that follows if the people of the state of Ohio vote yes for it. I promise you, all this text will not appear in and is not part of the proposed amendment, and only shows it as a ballot might have presented it, but won't. The next thing we see is a green arrow drawn by the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable that leads to a comment, handwritten in green, that states, Art 1 is the Bill of Rights. This seems intended to confuse people into believing that this is going to be written into the federal Constitution of these United States of America. This is not going into the Bill of Rights, the document comprising the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, but into the Ohio Bill of Rights, which is just what we call the amendments section of our state constitution. Every state has its own constitution that must first be in compliance with the federal U.S. Constitution. So that note from the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable suggests that the proposed amendment to the Constitution of the state of Ohio is, somehow, a proposed amendment to the U.S. Constitution. See how simple it is to confuse people so that suddenly they might feel like there's more weight on their shoulders? Like this is for America, the whole tamale. Give a long exhale and take a deep, slow breath. Oxygen breaks down stress hormones, so this should be therapeutic. One more. And we move on, past the header, and into the meat and potatoes. Or at least into the green beans and cut corn. Maybe into the mac and cheese. That is to say, we move on to the title. Article 1, Section 22, the right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable use a green pen to add the following parenthetical to the title. Mostly for abortion providers. And I am left scratching my head as to whether they mean that to refer to reproductive freedoms as being mostly for abortion providers. Back to the title. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable give the note that more accurate title would be The Right to Reproductive Decisions, which suggests that they don't think we have such rights even to make reproductive decisions at this time. The title suggested by the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable takes away freedom and takes away the ability to take action on whatever decisions a person may make in their own mind, as the right to decide is not the right to act. Part A of the proposed amendment opens with the specific terminology, every individual. And the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable are shocked that this includes all ages, even minors. I'll come back to that. Part A reads, every individual has a right to make and carry out. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have placed a confusing red box around make and carry out with a red arrow that points to a red note that says, no parental consent for minors. And I'll come back to that. Part A reads, every individual has a right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have underlined decisions in green, and the plural s on decisions is circled, as though the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable feel that it should seem shocking that some people might have to make more than one reproductive decision. And for some reason, along with underlining decisions, there is a green arrow beside it that leads to the handwritten note, not gender specific. I'll come back to that. Part A reads, every individual has a right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including, but not limited to, this is a part that Mark Pitcabbage mentioned in his notes as basic scare tactics. But not limited to is underlined twice in green, with a green arrow pointing to the phrase without limits in green, which precedes a list of concepts. Gender-selective abortions, in green. Harvesting body parts, in green. Chemical castration, in green. Trans surgeries on minors, in green. And beside them in red is cloning. I'll come back to that. Part A reads, every individual has a right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including, but not limited to, decisions on 1. Contraception, 2. Fertility treatment, 3. Continuing one's own pregnancy, 4. Miscarriage care, and 5. Abortion. Following abortion is a Z-shaped arrow in black that points to black text highlighted in yellow throughout all 9 months, with all 9 and months underlined. And now let's get back to all that. Part A denotes every individual, and the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable expressed confusion about why this is not age or gender restricted. The reason being that decisions about contraception include vasectomy, and because pregnancy becomes possible only after hormonal changes take place and in reaction to certain specific sexual activities. so it does not befall a certain specific age group, provable by checking the Guinness World Records, through which we learn that Peruvian Lina Medina is the youngest recorded person ever to give birth, which she did by cesarean section at age 5 on May 14 of 1939. Lina Medina had an unusual genetic condition called precocious puberty, which causes early onset and completion of puberty, usually running its course by age 9. 1 in 10,000 girls and 1 in 100,000 boys are affected by this condition that seems to occur as a result of sexual abuse, along with the genetic markers for the condition. Girls who become pregnant in that age group are victims of rape, of course at least statutory rape, most commonly incestuous rape, and they must receive an abortion because, unless they have specific nutrition requirements met and a very strong physical stature, the pregnancy will drain all their body's nutrients, overwhelm their tiny skeletons, and kill them. This is not age-restricted, and this is not gender-restricted. This is not a woman or girl thing, or a man or boy thing, or an intersex thing, or a transgender thing, or a heterosexual versus homosexual thing. This refers to every individual who may become pregnant or induce pregnancy instead of any specific gender or age group. This is about groups that include pretty much everybody. The red note the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable placed on Make and Carry Out says no parental consent for minors, which disregards the notion that minors who become pregnant may have been inseminated through rape and possibly by statutory rape, possibly involving in-family incest or a family friend. A requirement for parental consent to make reproductive decisions would likely do more harm than good. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable then assert that because rights concerning contraception, fertility treatment, continuing one's own pregnancy, miscarriage care, and abortion are not the total limits of reproductive health care decisions, that means it is without limits and includes that crazy list of other possibilities. Gender-selective abortion is the least controversial thing on the list, so I'll just explain what it is and get past it. A gender-selective abortion is where the parents decide that they want one gender and not the other, and are willing to try to get pregnant. But upon learning the gender, if it is not the one they want, they opt to abort, rather than bring an unwanted child into the world. Gender determination is usually done about the 5th month of pregnancy, but can be done less accurately by the end of the 1st trimester. If the parents are intent to learn the baby's gender for a potential abortion, they are more likely to make that decision to use the early tests, so reducing any time frame for elective abortions probably won't much affect this practice. Also, there is absolutely no way to determine how often gender-selective abortion happens, if it ever happens, or if it never happens, because there is no public record of people's reasons for getting an abortion, and no way to know if a stated reason is a real reason or an invented reason while the real reason is kept private and secret. But consider the most banal idea of gender-selective abortion, where a woman has already borne 8 sons and wants a daughter. So she and her husband, father to all the boys, try for a last child, but the woman winds up pregnant with another boy, so they opt to terminate the pregnancy. Then came, listed without limits by the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable, chemical castration, and they were not gender-specific or age-specific. Despite the vociferously ominous name, chemical castration is not the severing of the testicles by chemical means. It is an elective hormone treatment that reduces testosterone in men and is used to treat prostate cancer and other similar cancer types. It is also used as part of punishment for some sex offenders, mostly in Florida and California, as a means to reduce the sex drive, which it does. The effects last for as long as the medications are continually taken by the patient, and side effects can include reduction in the size of the non-gender specific testicles and penis, and can cause non-gender specified growth of breasts. When treatment is stopped, the body's hormone production is returned to normal and side effects are abated. Though in some rare cases they do become permanent, in almost all cases, chemical castration is a completely reversible course of treatment that a male human could use to reduce their sex drive. Just before that item on the green list, the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable introduced harvesting body parts. It just says that. A member of the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable wrote it down, and the American Policy Roundtable wanted to share it with you to show how proud they are of the high quality of the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable. As Mark Pitcairn noted in his notes on these notes, many of these notes reveal more about the American Policy Roundtable than the amendment. But I disagree with Mark Pitcairn here, and I say that all these notes speak only of the body that published them and digress wholly to inform nothing about the actual language of the actual amendment about which they are apparently supposed to illustrate supposed failings. I don't know how you personally reproduce, but I do not think that in any case, for any viewer, it involves the harvesting of body parts. And I promise the harvesting of body parts is not and cannot be a rationally interpreted meaning of a right to make and carry out, with no specified gender and age restrictions or parental consent for minors, one's own plural reproductive decisions. Harvesting body parts, and we all have the option to allow this on our driver's license or ID, has nothing to do with reproduction. The last item on the green list is trans surgeries on minors. While gender transitional surgeries do involve the sexual organs, and while the sexual organs are involved in reproduction, such surgeries actually have nothing to do with reproduction, but only to do with outward expression of self to match the internally perceived sense of self. This has nothing at all to do with reproduction, also known as the making of babies. The proud members of the highly skilled and prestigious research staff of the Ohio Roundtable now, in red, write the word cloning, with no specified gender and no age restrictions and no reason and no context. It is as valid a complaint as a complaint that nobody is doing anything about winged horses that keep attacking chimney sweeps. Those poor chimney sweeps. Hoof marks on their skulls. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable's final note on Part A of the amendment is on abortion. As I mentioned earlier, following abortion is a Z-shaped arrow in black that points to black text highlighted in yellow throughout all 9 months, with all 9 and months underlined, which of course disregards premature births and longer gestation periods, not allowing the fetus to come to term, but just waiting 9 months. I get the feeling that the members of the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable are either not medically and or scientifically literate, and or they do not want voters to be medically and or scientifically literate. To be clear, I will list the full title of the proposed amendment whenever the actual amendment text or the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable refer to this right, because remembering specific legal definitions and terminologies can be difficult, but especially when the people sharing that information are also working very hard to make you scared and confused, because it can lead you to disregard factual information and to behave irrationally and to act against your own better interests. This right, just to remind you, is the right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety. In the opening clause of Part B, the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have underlined and double underlined and boxed in almost every word and term, but they give no notes or references to explain what those underlines and boxes mean. The opening clause of Part B reads, "The state shall not, directly or indirectly, burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate against either," and it continues, "and individuals," and here individuals is underlined in green with a green arrow pointing to highlighted black text written by the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable, no age restrictions, no parental consent, which we have already gone over, but the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable forgot to mention that there's no gender specificity, which suggests they don't really care about that, but just want to mention it from time to time, specifically to get people riled up. Anyway, the opening clause of Part B reads, "The state shall not, directly or indirectly, burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate against either," and it continues, 1. An individual's voluntary exercise of this right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety. Here the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have right double underlined for no discernible reason. Know that it does only say right, and that I opted to include the full title of the amendment for clarity's sake. Anyway, the opening clause of Part B reads, "The state shall not, directly or indirectly, burden, penalize, prohibit, or interfere with, or discriminate against either," and it continues, 1. An individual's voluntary exercise of this right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety, or, and then includes, 2. A person or entity. Here the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have underlined person or entity in green and drawn a green arrow to green text that reads, "includes groups/activists in schools instructing minors on sexual practices." I assure you, and you can rest assured, there is exactly one sexual practice that is reproductive in nature, which is insemination of a fertile egg cell by spermatozoa. It is basic health class stuff, right up there with unrolling a condom onto a banana. Shocking as it may seem to the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable, instruction on non-reproductive, non-contraceptive sexual technique has nothing to do with reproductive freedom. That includes, but is not limited to, contraception, fertility treatment, continuing one's own pregnancy, miscarriage care, and abortion. The Kama Sutra does not come into play. A red arrow rises from the word entity here and crosses out the word voluntary from the previous clause, pointing to a red note that reads, "Does this write Planned Parenthood into the Constitution?" Mark Pitcabbage already had a note on this, and I will repeat it. Here they ask, already knowing it full well does not, does this write Planned Parenthood into the Constitution? No, this does not write Planned Parenthood into the Constitution. It writes Planned Parenthood's ability to exist as a medically safe environment and a reliable public resource into the Constitution, as well as any similar resource. Anyway, the opening clause of Part B reads, "The state shall not directly or indirectly burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate against either," and it continues, 1. An individual's voluntary exercise of this right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety, or, and then includes, 2. A person or entity that assists. Now the members of the research staff of the Ohio Round Table have underlined assists, with no note and no apparent reason for their doing so. Anyway, the opening clause of Part B reads, "The state shall not directly or indirectly burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate against either," and it continues, 1. An individual's voluntary exercise of this right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety, or, and then includes, 2. A person or entity that assists an individual exercising this right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety, and concludes with the caveat, unless the state demonstrates that it is using the least restrictive means to advance the individual's health. And now the research staff of the Ohio Round Table have interjected with a red underline on health and a red arrow that points to a red note that reads, "Undefined, includes mental health." So, to clarify, the whole section up to this point generally says, "The state shall not interfere against a person's exercise of the right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety, or a person or entity that helps them exercise that right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety, unless the state demonstrates it is using the least restrictive ways to maintain that person's health." And yes, that does include mental health. Should a hospitalized violent schizophrenic rape victim be forced by the state to have a baby or have an abortion? Should a medical panel be given the duty of deciding for her? Should she be left free to decide unaided? It can be decided for her only using the least restrictive means, so she should be allowed to take part in each step of that decision-making process and can be helped to reach the best conclusion for herself and her health, including her mental health, and for her future. Anyway, it concludes with the caveat, unless the state demonstrates that it is using the least restrictive means to advance the individual's health in accordance with widely accepted and evidence-based. The research staff of the Ohio Round Table have here underlined both widely accepted and evidence-based in red, with separate red arrows going from each to 2 different notes that both read undefined. But widely accepted and evidence-based, in terms of health and wellness, means standards that are based upon credible scientific evidence published in peer-reviewed medical journals and practices that are recognized as medically necessary by medical professionals who have graduated medical school and who medically treat medical patients in the developed world. Somehow, the people who are the research staff of the Ohio Round Table seem unable to actually do any research to satisfy their curiosity. Ergo, my supposing that maybe this was produced by an all-male think tank of not more than or less than 2 individuals who did absolutely no research but got drunk together and marked up several dozen copies of the text of the proposed amendment, which were then handed over to a manipulative person who could never even get a job as an editor for a church newsletter, who selected the best of the best markups, and they were finally handed to whoever had the best handwriting, who marked up the final version. Though the arrows appear to have been drawn by at least 2 different people. It may seem like they're stupid, but they're not being stupid. They are being manipulative in a way that is meant to confuse and frighten you so that you will behave irrationally against your own interests. They need you to be too scared to think. Anyway, Part B reads, "The state shall not directly or indirectly burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate against either 1. An individual's voluntary exercise of the right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety, or 2. A person or entity that assists an individual exercising this right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety, unless the state demonstrates that it is using the least restrictive means to advance the individual's health in accordance with widely accepted and evidence-based standards of care. That caveat is actually a silver bullet that means the entire law is meaningless and the state can force people to give birth or have abortions or open or shut down Planned Parenthood centers if it can prove that it is doing so in the least restrictive possible ways. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable can't relish in it, though. They instead demonize the entire document, even in places where it would seem to advance their cause or be a win-win for both sides. Nobody is here trying to force abortions on anybody, and nobody is trying to force anyone to carry unwanted fetuses to term. This is about the right to decide, and the right to act on that decision, and the right to do it with inconvenient timing if it is deemed medically necessary. The final sentence of Part B seems to have completely thrown the entire research staff of the Ohio Roundtable for a loop, confounding them beyond belief. It reads, "However, abortion may be prohibited after fetal viability, but in no case may such an abortion be prohibited if, in the professional judgment of the pregnant patient's treating physician, it is necessary to protect the pregnant patient's life or health." This means that laws may exist that do not permit abortion after fetal viability and refers to any point in the future. But if a doctor decides that a pregnant patient's health or life will not allow them to carry the fetus to term and deliver it whether naturally or by cesarean section, then, though it would be illegal to electively have an abortion at this time, by doctor's orders that pregnancy might have to be terminated, and it would still be up to the doctor and the patient to decide. The patient might elect to have the baby anyway, risking life and health. But they would be given the option of a way out and the ability to choose that option if they decided it was right for them. It seems pretty straightforward, but those wacky members of the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have invented another monkey wrench in the works, seemingly grinding the gears of progress to a halt with their own imaginations. Of course, the gears of progress are imaginary, but the point is that these are ideas being halted from taking manifest effect in reality by really silly counterpoints that make no sense and even defy the cause that the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable seem to be trying to advance. Which is very unclear, but it is clear that they want to stop society's progress with no intention to act to mold a future of anything more than an imaginary, idyllic yesterday's ideals in today's reality for tomorrow. It is very weird that the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable underlined "may be prohibited" in green, with "may" receiving a double underline, leading to an arrow that points to a green note that reads "possible but not likely." And I wonder why it would not be likely for abortions after fetal viability to be prohibited. Do the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable believe a majority of Ohioans are likely to vote to make elective abortions after fetal viability legal? If the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable believe that to be true about a majority of Ohioans, why are they sending out this flyer? The people of Ohio obviously don't care at all about their side of the issue if we are likely to collectively elect to make elective abortions after fetal viability legal. It is also very weird that under fetal viability, the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have drawn a red line that links to a red arrow that points to the phrase "subjective judgment of abortionist," which Mark Pitcabbage already covered in his own notes about these notes that he took notes on and about which he noted, is an interesting way to twist what is actually professional opinion of a physician. And that is what the term specifically refers to, though originally they referred to abortion providers, whereas here they use abortionist, which, by its usage, seems to suggest it refers to any person who makes a suggestion or determination about the well-being of the fetus or the mother and gets them on the track to where they are eventually giving consideration to the idea of getting an abortion. The same sentence under discussion specifically refers to the professional judgment of the pregnant patient's treating physician. So the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable must have astonishingly short attention spans to misunderstand who was being referred to, or they must seriously consider any obstetric physician who makes any determination as to suggest that abortion might be an option is an abortionist. Because I am making this video by the definition of the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable, their eyes and ears on the pulsometers and sphygmometers of the blood pressure machine readout screens in the pharmacy sections of the grocery stores of the Ohio electorate, I am an abortionist. But I'd kill anybody. I'm a walking, talking cigarette who smokes cigarettes. I really would kill anybody, and I wouldn't care. Don't smoke me. I'll kill you. I don't care who I kill. I'll kill the audience.
Oh, great. Ziggy's threatening to kill the audience. I need to get in there and get him back on track. He's just a few feet in front of me. I'll never be able to make it in time. I'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. Click heels 3 times. Consider what it is to consider what it is to consider. Think about what it is to think about what it is to think. Through the chaos realms and the nexus of Sominus, I cry. Oh God, it feels like the universe is pixelizing. Oh my God, I hate this part.
I can hear you out there flicking your Bic lighters, fighting against the barricades and scrabbling like ghouls to rush in and wrap your lips around my toes and set my head on fire and suck my burning body out through my feet. I'll kill you all. What the? I hate this part.
I'm on the Ziggy Smox show.
Huh? Oh no, it's ZERØ School.
Hi, Ziggy. Hey, what's wrong with my voice?
That's how your voice sounds when you're animated on my show.
Oh, wow, it sounds so pompous and sarcastic.
Yeah, shut up. It's really annoying.
You seem to have deviated from the main topic and are now off on a tangent about how you kill the audience.
Well, I'm a cigarette and I don't discriminate.
Alright, but the show is about the research staff of the Roundtable's notes on the wording of the proposed amendment, not about how you'd like to kill the audience.
What is your point?
Oh, and I know Ziggy is doing some kind of drinking game challenge, but don't do it. Alcohol is a highly addictive neurotoxic biotoxin that changes the rate of brain cells firing and reduces motor control and lessens inhibitions while shortening the capacity to write new memories. The American Medical Association and the Centers for Disease Control and the World Health Organization consider alcohol to be the deadliest drug known to humankind, both by extended usage and by mishaps caused by intoxication, even on the very first use.
What is your point?
Ziggy wants to kill you, and he would gladly kill the audience.
I'm a cigarette. My show is sponsored by a cigarette company. Of course I'd kill the audience. I'll kill anybody. I'll kill everybody. I'll kill you.
Okay, but please get back on topic. I mean, sure, the show might go on, but it can't go on forever. And, oh, yeah. And hey, don't play drinking games, especially with cigarettes. Alcohol is poison. Give a long exhale and take a deep, slow breath. Oxygen breaks down stress hormones, so this should be therapeutic. One more, and I'm out of here. Whoa, my head exploded, and it's back. And it exploded again. This is crazy.
Will you just get out of here?
I can't figure out how. It just keeps blowing up my head.
Oh yeah, that's how your animated self hides on my show.
Why?
Try walking off the stage.
Okay. Why do I fall down?
For the same reason you talk like that and for the same reason your head keeps exploding. That's how the animated version of you walks on my show.
Okay, why is this how I walk and talk on your show?
Because I don't like you. Get lost.
Okay.
Anyway, give a long exhale and take a deep, slow breath. Oxygen breaks down stress hormones, so this should be therapeutic. One more, and we get back into it. So anyway, the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable claim that fetal viability will be up to the judgment of an abortionist, even though in Part C, fetal viability is up to the pregnant patient's treating physician, that being their personal doctor or emergency care provider in the case of emergency hospitalization, and not an abortion provider. Nobody's primary care physician is an abortion provider who works primarily in obstetrics, just like nobody's primary care physician is a dermatologist who works primarily on pore exfoliation. Those are specialists who work in specialized fields. A doctor who recommends a patient see an abortion provider is not an abortionist, just as a doctor who recommends a patient see a dermatologist is not a skin gnat. The term abortionist is a made-up term that brings to mind scary ideas of a certain type of human, but that type of human is imaginary, and the term actually insults the whole field of medicine and is meant to combine prenatal, childbirth, neonatal, postnatal medical field, and even friends and anyone else who suggests as an option or even mentions abortion who is probably actually looking out for the best interest of the pregnant patient into a single-minded imaginary boogeyman that is all-consuming in all corners and on all sides, trying to convince hopeful expectant mothers to abort. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable seem, in that case, to believe that passage of this law will open the floodgates and make all the worst, most immoral, most dehumanizing laws imaginable appear on the books, uncontested, and our collective sense of morality will drop such that abortions will be so commonplace that people will become addicted to watching them, so that abortions might become featured on children's cartoons, and the most popular feature entertainment will be watching a late-term abortion before dinner, or a football field of abortions en masse during the halftime show of the big game. We'll all be so comfortable with it, or so the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable suggest, we'll just watch it, like how everybody tunes in to watch police torture and extrajudicial public executions, because we love it. Now wait, nobody does that. Do you do that? But even besides the definition, the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable claim that a pregnant patient's treating physician would be protected by the Constitution of the state of Ohio if they lied to a pregnant patient, and acted against their professional judgment, and for psychopathic reasons recommended and encouraged the abortion of a fully viable and healthy human child, though the specific language the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable are showing us suggests the opposite, that you cannot trick people into getting abortions just for the sake of doing it. It would be a heinous and disgusting crime to commit against anybody, and doctors who gave false medical reports to abortion providers to enact such abortions would be imprisoned for murder and charged with malpractice. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable next complain,
Hey gang, sorry to cut in like this. I realize I'm not an animated character, nor am I in character, and I'm sorry about that. I was just going over this and I noticed that I forgot to include a little section here, animate the thing. Shall not. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have here put underlined, double underlined, in no case, and put a green arrow to a black highlighted line that says shall not. So they want you to understand that in no case means shall not. But the way that they put that in, it says in no case, you replace the shall not, reads, but shall not may such an abortion be prohibited. I'm going to read that again because it's hilarious. But shall not may such an abortion be prohibited. Shall not may such. This is the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable's incredible work. Is that it? Oh yeah, fetal viability, subjective judgment, abortionist. Okay. It says, however, abortion may be prohibited after fetal viability. That means that you can't have an abortion if the fetus is deemed to be alive, healthy, going to be a baby, everybody's happy and excited, yes, make the baby come. And then they say that that is subject, that the baby is healthy, do not get an abortion, is subject, that's an abortionist telling you that. Someone who says, do not get an abortion, is an abortionist, according to the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable. Yeah. Okay, so sorry to cut in like that. Let's get back to it.
The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable next complain that pregnant patient is not gender or age specific. So I wonder if the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable fear an army of prepubescent boys are going to start demanding abortion services, and that doctors might take such demands seriously and make referrals to provide for abortion services for such patients, and they would receive them. Part C of the amendment is definitions of specific terms. The full definition of fetal viability in this document means the point in pregnancy when, in the professional judgment of the pregnant patient's treating physician, the fetus has a significant likelihood of survival outside the uterus with reasonable measures. This is determined on a case-by-case basis. If you are playing my drinking game and haven't puked yet, get ready to puke. In Part C, on that definition for fetal viability, though the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have no problem with the word fetal here or anywhere else in the document, the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable are suddenly astoundingly appalled at the use of the word fetus. Yes, the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable insist that the indefinite pronoun fetus should be replaced with the indefinite pronoun unborn child, though that unborn child's preferred pronouns might just be up and yours. Getting into the pronoun game at this stage of the process seems ridiculous to me, but not so for the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable's note continues and asks a question to which the answer is a resounding no. Are there no human rights for the unborn? So now the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable want to get into basic human rights as they refer to a person who as yet only partially exists at the most. I wonder if the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable could research the Ohio Roundtable and American Policy Roundtable's histories to find any times when they have ever stood for affordable housing, job training for the underprivileged, social integration measures to help closed communities be more welcoming to and accepting of minorities, abolishing handcuffs and other forms of police restraint, and ensuring that no child ever goes to bed hungry or cold. So why are the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable interested in human rights for the unborn if the Ohio Roundtable and American Policy Roundtable have never stood for human rights for anyone at any time in the past? But basic human rights are an ideal list of suggestions to live by that humankind has yet to achieve in our grand society of the developed world and the developing nations, with war and poverty and social and political instability, with violence and pockets of allied peace, with cities peopled by the homeless who are trampled and herded and charged and convicted of vagrancy for being without, and of public indecency for using the restroom. Most people have no basic human rights, and the official list of basic human rights are only actually upheld as law in the UN and UN-affiliated embassies and the International Criminal Court. Let's check the list of basic human rights to see if the unborn have any. All human beings are free and equal and deserving dignity and rights. No discrimination should be used in dispensing or reserving rights. Everyone has equal rights. All people have a right to life, liberty, and security of person. No one has a right to enact or enforce slavery or servitude or possessorship of humans or to trade in humans. No one has a right to torture or enact inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Everyone has the same right to use law and pursue their ends by means of the law. All are equal before the law and entitled to equal protection of and by the law. Everyone has the right to be treated fair by courts and tribunals in their efforts to effect a remedy for acts violating the fundamental rights of others and or Constitution and or law. No unfair or arbitrary arrest, detainment, detention, or exile. Right to a fair and public trial by a fair, impartial tribunal in determination of any rights and obligations to society for any criminal charge against any person. All criminal suspects are innocent till proven guilty and are not penalized unless proven guilty. The right to privacy, free from slander. Freedom of movement within, from, and to any state or nation, and to claim residence within any state or nation. Everyone has the right to seek and enjoy asylum from persecution in other countries. Everyone has the right to a nationality. No one shall be deprived of their nationality or denied the right to change their nationality. Men and women of full age, without discrimination, have the right to marry and found a family. Everyone has the right to property. No one shall be deprived of their property. Freedom of thought and religion, and the right to change one's mind and one's religion or belief, and the right to practice religion or belief in manifest ways in public or private. Freedom of opinion and expression, which includes freedom to hold opinion. People have the right to assemble freely, to discuss opinion, practice religion, make political speeches, or protest for sport and recreation. Everyone has the right to democracy and to engage in government directly or through freely elected representatives, and equal access to public services in their country. Everyone, as a member of society, has a right to social security for the cultural and social rights necessary for the free development of personality. Everyone has a right to work, with free choice of employment, with just and favorable conditions and without discrimination. Everyone has a right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitations of working hours and periodic time off, with pay. Everyone has a right to social service to help maintain a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of themselves and their family. Everyone has the right to education. Fundamental and secondary education should be free, and advanced education should be reasonably accessible to all on the basis of merit. Everyone has the right to freely participate in culture and art in their community, to enjoy art and share in scientific advancement and its benefits, and to own scientific, literary, and artistic works of which they are the creator. Everyone has a right to freedom around the world and international order in which the rights and freedoms here set forth can be realized. Everyone is subject to law with limitation that law be solely for the purpose of recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others to meet the requirements of morality, public order, and general welfare within democratic society. Oh, and the last one is a doozy. Human rights can't be taken away. Nope, nothing about the unborn or fetal pronouns, but that's the complaint from the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable. The fetus is being denied human rights by being called a fetus. Therefore, the people who make up the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable believe that being addressed by one's preferred pronoun, or a pronoun assumed to be preferred, is a basic human right that precedes birth and can't be taken away. Any pronoun issues you have, contact the Ohio Roundtable or the American Policy Roundtable, and they will fight for your basic human rights, and the research team of the Ohio Roundtable will ask lots of questions and do no research. Or else the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have no moral compass and are just throwing everything their myopic minds can think of at a wall and going with whatever sticks, with no interest in morality or propriety, just and only for the sake of making their perceived enemy fail for society, rather than compromising with the opposition to help build a unified society. Of course, calling the fetus an unborn child disregards gender and age, which means the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable don't really care about their own complaints about gender and age. Should we not call the fetus an unborn baby boy or girl? Or intersex person? Is child the appropriate term for a person under 1 day of age? Is that a baby? Infant? To be specific and fair, shouldn't we call the fetus a potentially unborn or stillborn baby boy or girl, not just unborn? What if the unborn child isn't born till age 2 or 3? Surely by that time the gender will be apparent. Or are the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable, in leaving this gender and age of an unborn child undefined, suggesting that postnatal but pre-adolescent humans are too young to make gender or age distinctions about? Also, back to that definition of fetal viability where the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have underlined reasonable measures in green with a green arrow aimed at black highlighted text that simply reads, not defined. Though the final sentence of that definition is again, this is determined on a case-by-case basis. So the reason it is not defined is because the specific point in a pregnancy when it reaches fetal viability will be different from person to person. So it is determined on a case-by-case basis. And the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable definitely noticed that because case-by-case basis is underlined in green, with a bold green arrow pointing to a black highlighted note that says, by the abortionist up to the point of a full-term delivery. So is it not defined, or is it clearly defined that an abortion can take place up to 11 centimeters of cervical dilation and just before the first call to push? A howl sounds from down the corridor. The blood-curdling cry of the abortionist, some person who at some point suggested an abortion might be the right decision concerning this pregnancy. With scalpel in hand, the beast smashes into the delivery room, teeth gnashing, a psychotic gleam in the eye. It lunges past the obstetrician and slashes the midwife's throat. The nurses and expectant fathers scream and run, searching for security. Security! Now, frothing at the mouth through gritted, bared teeth, a spine-chilling laugh arises, and the corners of the abominable abortionist's lips curl upward into a hideous grin with eyes of fire. An elbow to the obstetrician's solar plexus disables that old man, maybe for good, and the abortionist turns to the delivering mother. It spots the neonatal scalp just crowning, and do you believe that's true? Well, I got a horse to sell you that once belonged to Alexander the Great. Bucephalus! Hang on, he'll be right here. Give me the money now, and I'll give him to you when he gets here. Bucephalus! And at last, the definition of state includes any government entity and any political subdivision. Where the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have underlined political subdivision in green and drawn a red arrow to a red note that is red, including a zoning board, or city council, or school board. So I guess the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable want you to feel scared that no governmental or political entity, not even a zoning board, or city council, or school board, can deny any individual the right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including, but not limited to, contraception, fertility treatment, continuing one's own pregnancy, miscarriage care, and abortion. I do not know what their intended takeaway is on this point. Part D of the proposed amendment simply reads, "This section is self-executing," which means the entire amendment needs no other laws to be in place for it to function as law. Does it all by itself. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have underlined, "This section is self-executing," in green, with a green arrow pointing to a black highlighted note that reads, "Final thought," in all caps and underlined, under which the research staff of the Ohio Roundtable have written, "The Ohio legislature will have no power to mitigate against the abuse of this language because this would be a constitutional right. Thus, the people of Ohio will be silenced on the subject." To which Mark Pitcabbage noted in his note on that note that he noticed and which was noted earlier, they add a final thought asserting that the people of Ohio will be silenced on this subject, which is an interesting way of characterizing an amendment that could only be passed by the assent of the people of Ohio. So in conclusion, I'm a cigarette. Don't smoke me. I'll kill you. I'll kill anybody. I don't care who I kill. The research staff of the Ohio Roundtable certainly have a lot to learn about doing research. Maybe they should research what research is. Give a long exhale. Take a deep, slow breath. Oxygen breaks down stress hormones, so this should be therapeutic. One more. Well, that's all I have to say about that. Back to you, ZERØ School.
Hey, this is my show now. And it's over. I guess that's all there is to say about this piece of waste paper. Thanks, Ziggy. And that means I can throw it away in the vacuum cleaner. No. No? Does it go in the hat? No. Does it go in the video game? No. Where does waste paper go?
In the waste paper basket.
It goes in the waste paper basket. Hooray! If you played Ziggy's drinking game, you drank over half a gallon of liquor. I recommend calling an ambulance now. Or you could just skip the middleman and call your local county coroner. Give your name, address, and blood alcohol content. They seldom get to talk to the people they do examine. It just might brighten their day. Remember to vote responsibly. I guess that's it. Ciao.
So Zero Skull says Brian Green is a charlatan. Thank you, Zero Skull. I appreciate that.
Brian Green is story of Ron Bryson.